All right, we're going to bring the meeting to order if we can. Tonight is the Planning and Zoning meeting for June 11th, 2015 for the Jefferson City Planning and Zoning Commission. Before we get involved with our agenda and the items that we've got before us, Sonny Sanders with the City of Jefferson is going to come up and speak, and I'll let him tell you what he's got to talk about.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know what the CAMPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, is doing regarding bicycle and pedestrian planning. As part of our long-range 20-year transportation plan, we have started an advisory group and steering committee, and we're starting public involvement activities. And one of them is going to be an open house here June 25th, Thursday, and we're going to have information about visions. We have some preliminary vision statements we've put together and several other displays involving what we've been doing, and we want to start getting the word out that we're working on this. And I'd be glad to answer any questions, or if there's something I forgot, y'all are invited.
Very good. It's open to the general public?
It's open to the general public, 3:30 to 6 across the hall.
Okay.
And if you're out at Thursday Night Live next week, you'll probably see us out there trying to round up the crowd.
Very good. Well, we appreciate you coming.
Thank you. Yes.
So is there an agenda or itinerary regarding this meeting?
It's more or less an open house format, so you can come in anytime you want to. Staff will be there to answer questions. We have several different displays. We're going to have a map of accidents and some statistics regarding pedestrians and bicyclists, some education posters and things like that, and we'll have a survey too. I can send out an email to y'all with a link to the survey and more information probably beginning of next week if you'd like. Okay.
And Sonny, for anybody that's watching, I was just looking at the bottom of your flyer that you provided us. You're serving the Holt Summit, Jefferson City, Lake Mikee, St. Martin's, Taos, Wardsville, and parts of Cole and Callaway County. So it's not just Jefferson City.
It's not just Jefferson City. We are a multi-jurisdictional board, and it's a federally mandated program, and everybody's welcome from the area. Even if you just work in Jeff City or the area and live elsewhere, you're more than welcome to participate.
Great. Well, again, we appreciate it. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. We will continue on. Again, I would mention that we called the order the Planning and Zoning Commission for June 11th, 2015. My name is Chris Jordan, and I am the vice chairman of this commission. Before we get started, I do want to mention to everybody at the beginning of the meeting that our chairman, Ralph Robinette, is not going to be here tonight, as we all know, and Janice mentioned that he's been ill, and he is at home and doing well, so I think we all want to send him our well wishes, and I wanted to bring that up at the beginning of the meeting. So we'll hopefully be seeing him here real soon. Next, we will have the members introduce themselves with council liaison and city staff. Jack, would you like to start?
Jack Deacon.
Mike Lester.
Bob George. Dave Nunn.
Ann Strotman.
Chris Yarnell.
Bunny Tricky Cotton.
Eric Barron, city staff.
Janice McMillan, Director of Planning and Protective Services.
Brian Wolford, city staff.
And Brian, if I may, this is your first meeting with us at the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Yes, it is. I am the new associate city councilor for the city.
Okay, well, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
The city code authorizes 9 regular members and 3 alternates. Alternates are designated to vote upon absence or disqualification of a regular member. A quorum of 5 members or alternates is necessary to conduct business. According to Ms. Ann, we are okay with the amount of folks we have tonight. Is anyone alternates not voting or anything like that? Are we good to go? Okay. The following regular members are absent: Dean Dutoy and Dale Vaughn. The voting members will be Bunny Tricky Cotton, Jack Deacon, not Dean Dutoy, Bob George, Michael Lester, David Nunn, Chris Yarnell, and our alternates are not here this evening, Ron Fitzwater and Aaron Wiseman. Okay, we will call for cases. Case number P15006, a zoning text amendment pertaining to funeral arrangement service office.
That is a city staff initiated proposal, and I will represent that case.
Okay. We do have, and did you give that a case number, Eric, for the street naming? You did not. Okay, so we don't
I
need
did
to-
not. Yes, added to the agenda. So the agenda that was sent in your packets a week ago is slightly different than the agenda in front of you. We added a street naming down there on item D under other business. And I'll explain more when we get to that item.
So you'll be taking care of both of those.
Yes,
So we have no need for continuance.
that's correct.
All right, thank you. With that, we will let you tell us about the format of the hearing and order of testimony.
Thank you. I would like to briefly describe the procedures of the Planning Commission. The proceedings of the meeting are being recorded, so I ask that when you speak, please step to the microphone and give your name and address for the record. After a brief introduction by city staff, applicants and consultants can explain the project. The opening presentation shall be limited to 10 minutes. We will then ask to hear from supporters of the request. We will then ask to hear from opponents of the request, and we will then ask to hear from anyone else who wishes to speak on the request. City staff will then describe the proposal and make the recommendations on the request. In order to reduce the time necessary to hear an application, reference to printed material, including the staff reports, applicable findings, ordinances, and/or statutes, shall not be read into the record unless directed by the Commission. The Commission will then close testimony from the floor, and the Commission will then discuss the proposal and make a motion on the request. The form of the motion shall be positive. That is, the motion shall be made to accept the request as presented or with modifications, stipulations, or conditions. And a final vote will then be taken, ayes in favor, nays opposed, and the chairman shall announce the results of the vote, specifying the number of votes cast in favor and the number of votes cast against. And the following documents are entered as exhibits for all items under consideration at this meeting: the City Code as amended, the Comprehensive Plan and Land Use Map, copies of applications under consideration, the affidavit of publication of public notice in the newspaper, copies of drawings, plans, renderings under consideration, letters, memoranda or memoranda from staff, the staff reports, minutes of proceedings, any materials submitted by the public, and the rules of procedure for the Jefferson, Missouri Planning and Zoning Commission. These items are all public record and are available for inspection at the Department of Planning and Protective Services or through the Office of the City Clerk. Please be advised that any items that are presented or received pertaining to the cases under consideration become the property of the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. With that, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda as delivered to us this evening with the addition of the street naming?
I so move to adopt the agenda with the addition of the street naming item.
Second. Have a motion and second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will need a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting, which was March 9th, a few months ago. But if you've had a chance to look over those, I'd be willing to entertain a motion. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Eric, have we received any communication? I don't see any.
We haven't received any public comments on any of the requests. There's one item of communication associated with the one case, but I'll get to that with the case.
Very good. With that, we will move on to case number P15006, zoning code text amendment pertaining to the funeral arrangement service office. Eric.
Thank you. This request is a staff-initiated request to amend the zoning code in order to amend the definition for a funeral arrangement service office, and then also amend the land use matrix within the zoning code regarding where such land uses would be permitted. The request stems from a local operator of a funeral office here in Jefferson City. Ran into some difficulties when attempting to get his facility relicensed for a small expansion that he was doing, taking up a little bit more space within the existing building he was in. That particular location is on Capitol Avenue. It happens to be 611 East Capitol Avenue. And there's a letter from that individual, Mr. Tyler Woods, that's included in your packet that kind of gives the background of the difficulties that he ran into. And So funeral arrangement service office is a fairly new addition to the zoning code. It was added into the zoning code back in June of 2014, and so it appeared in front of this body back then and was then subsequently adopted by the city council and codified into the zoning code. The difficulty is that the definition that was put into the code at that time specifically prohibited storage of bodies and conduction of services in such a location. Well, it turns out that state law, in order for a funeral operator to get a license, they have to be able to do both of those things, even if it's on a very limited scale. And so what we are proposing is to go ahead and remove or amend the definition of funeral service or funeral arrangement service office in order to allow them to do those two things, to store bodies and also conduct services, but to limit them in terms of the square footage of such a use in order to within a certain zoning district, within the commercial office zoning district, in order to keep such uses that happen to locate in that district to a very small scale so that they don't disrupt other uses within that traditionally low traffic type of commercial office district. So if you'll see within your packet is the council bill that was put together by staff. It includes an amendment to Exhibit 3528 within the zoning code that would separate out funeral arrangement service office into two pieces, either above or below 1,500 square feet. The one consisting of less than 1,500 square feet would be permitted in the CO office commercial zoning district. Above 1,500 square feet would not be permitted within the CO district, but would be permitted in in the other three commercial districts. And then the new definition is included there as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this matter. There's one item that I'll address. Mr. Tyler Woods, his particular facility located at 611 East Capitol Avenue, that property happens to actually be zoned an RA2 zoning district, okay, rather than a commercial office. But as with many properties along Capitol Avenue, the zoning code prior to 2002 allowed for office uses within the RA2 district with a conditional use permit. So there's a whole lot of properties on Capitol Avenue that received conditional use permits to operate offices there, and those of course are still valid. And so that particular his business is located within a building that has been used as an office for many years. And so the way that the definition is crafted is it defines a funeral arrangement service office as an office use, and therefore we feel comfortable permitting that within an existing office building that happened to be approved by a conditional use permit in the past. Now, that being said, we also hope to, at sometime in the near future, bring forward a zoning plan for that section of Capitol Avenue that would establish perhaps a new zoning district, a mixed-use district, along that stretch of Capitol Avenue in support of the Central East Side Neighborhood Plan that would, again, be very office-oriented. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. It is a public hearing item, so anyone who wishes to speak from the public could do so.
Thank you, Eric. Does any of the commission members have questions for staff?
I know he was not in compliance because he had to have space for ceremonies, correct? And also space for storage. How is he going to be in compliance for storing remains, or is he?
My understanding is that the state inspector has visited his facility and he would be in compliance with their requirements. His conflict is with our definition.
And as just a matter of curiosity, in a size of 1,500 square feet, what exactly is involved with storing of bodies? And I mean, is it just going to be that there could be a single casket there? Is there a time period over which a body could be stored?
My understanding is yes, is that the requirement is only for a single space. Now, his particular business model, he has expressed that he would not be storing bodies It's not his business model, that he has other facility, another business that he works for to do such things. But in order to receive a state license, he must be able to store the body. So, but
I'm sorry, go ahead.
but of course, by changing the definition, we would then permit him to store the body. So if he were to amend his floor plan or business model, he would then be permitted to do that, but would be restricted in terms of this total size of his business.
It seems, I guess as a question to see if I'm correct about this assumption, that really this kind of fits this one situation, but as a practical matter, you've pretty much limited it so that, despite how it sounds, I can't imagine there'd be very many instances anybody would use 1,500 square feet for anything other than an office to do what originally was intended anyway. Is that?
It is crafted in order to restrict the size so that it is not a full-blown funeral home, for example, with large numbers of people coming for services. That is a use that is better located in the higher commercial districts, the C1 and C2 and C3 districts. And so it is crafted for that reason to only permit a very small facility.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Barron? Seeing none, we would normally look to the audience for anything, but we've got an empty crowd here tonight, so we'll move on.
Yeah, if you could open the public hearing and then see if anyone wishes to speak and then close
Okay,
it.
I will open the public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this matter? Seeing none, we will close. All right. No one else would like to speak on this request this evening? Okay. With that, I will close testimony. Eric, I guess we will move forward with any more of the staff report?
Nope, just form a motion at the bottom of the staff report. Motion for approval of the staff proposed amendment.
Okay. With that being said, we will open it up for a motion.
I would move that we accept the zoning code text amendment for funeral arrangement service offices as presented by the staff.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion passes. All right. Next, Eric, how do you want to do this? Do you want to go on and move up the street naming, or do you want to go ahead and go through the rest of the agenda?
I'd say let's just keep with the agenda as it is.
Follow the agenda, okay. We will move on to other business. There's a discussion of some possible zoning code amendments. Eric, are you going to tell us about that?
Yes. So there, as we often bring to you potential zoning code amendments, we like to bring them to you for discussion purposes before we actually put them down, publish them for public hearings, and formally put together amendments to the zoning code. There are three that we were hoping to speak about very briefly tonight. The first one deals with apartment building restrictions in the RA1 zoning district. And so there's two RA districts, RA1 and RA2. RA2 being the more dense district where you could build more units, for example, and the RA1 being less dense. Except for density differences between the two districts, there's really no differences in terms of being able to build actual apartment buildings within them as identified within our zoning code matrix in the zoning code. However, the purpose and intent section of the zoning code actually calls out that the RA1 district is intended for buildings of 4 units or less. It refers to townhouses, duplexes, row houses, and buildings of 4 units or less, and then the RA2 district is being intended for all of those plus larger apartment buildings. That's that's not the way that we've interpreted as staff over the years, because the zoning matrix actually lists both apartment buildings as being permitted within both districts. And so we're thinking about proposing an amendment that would change that, that would remove apartment buildings from the RA1 district from being permitted outright, and either list them as not being permitted in the RA1 district, list them as being a conditional use of the RA1 district, or, again, potentially just leave it the way it is already today and leaving it as a permitted use. We've done a survey of properties across town and came up with 4 properties that happen to be zoned RA1 that have something higher than a 4-plex on them. But besides that, those are there's only 4 properties that have something that would potentially be affected by this amendment. The staff position, well, certainly would appreciate any comments or thoughts that you might have. But potentially leaving it as a conditional use within the RA1 district would keep those 4 properties as being, keep them from becoming grandfathered or non-conforming, but would also allow more flexibility in case there is other property in town, undeveloped, zoned RA1, that could potentially be a good candidate for something more than a 4-plex, preventing them from having to go through a full-blown rezoning. Are there any thoughts? Does anyone have any thoughts about the RA1 district versus the RA2 district?
And I don't remember, I should know this, but what's the difference in density requirements between RA1 and RA2?
RA1 is 12 units per acre and the RA2 is 24. Practically speaking, it's very difficult to get up to the 24 unit density level, especially in Jefferson City because of the terrain, and then also because of parking requirements. Usually have to go several stories up to get something like that, and then you run out of parking.
And so then, would anything over a 4-plex in RA1 have been classified as an apartment? Is that how that?
Well, that's currently I don't think there is a real good definition for an apartment versus 4-plex or row houses and other things that are kind of listed in that purpose and intent. So it's probably something that we could take a look at as well, to just make sure our definitions are clean.
And I'm sure you'd know this better than I, but it seems like with the density requirement, that is there ever much of a conflict? So if somebody wanted to build a 6-plex or an 8-plex in an RA1 district, it really wouldn't create that much of a problem as long as the lot size was sufficient.
Well, it depends where it's located, and then also, how to put. When people are seeking a rezoning of property into one of those categories, there's often very little reason to pursue the RA2 district because the RA1 district allows apartments, and the density is, allowance is such that it really doesn't matter that, you might be restricted to 12 units per acre versus 24 because you'd never really be able to get to that density anyway. So it kind of detracts from the usefulness of the RA2 district. One thought is that by removing apartments from the RA1 district, is it gives this body an extra tool to use in terms of permitting a slightly higher level of land use, especially when adjacent to residential neighborhoods and single family and such, without opening up the box, so to speak, in terms of allowing full-blown apartments. So it provides a small stair step between those two.
And so would you end up having to come up with a definition of what an apartment actually is then?
I'd probably want to review the definitions in the zoning code. I didn't quite do a lot of that before this meeting.
Thanks.
Eric, one of the questions that I have, if you would exclude apartments from the RA1 or put them in as a conditional use permit, the 4 properties that you mentioned, one, would they automatically be given that conditional use permit if we did this zoning, or would they have to come back on their own to request that?
There is language within our zoning code on conditional use permits that if a land use is reclassified from permitted to conditional use, you are allowed to even expand on that property and use it as if you had essentially received that permit, or apologize, to use it as if it was a permitted use. And so it would have very little effect on those 4 properties. They would not be considered grandfathered or non-conforming.
So in a sense, you would say that they've already received that permit to be a conditional use permit?
That's one way of phrasing it, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Whereas if it was removed entirely and changed from permitted to non-permitted, then of course they would fall into a grandfathered category. That would have a large impact on them, because if their buildings were to burn, they would not be able to rebuild them.
My general thoughts are, and obviously I think you've asked for our comments, but at this point I would, if you're going to move in that direction, I would like to see that put in there as a conditional use permit. One is to allow the existing structures that are there, and 2, give the city as well as developers an opportunity to at least look at that option if their property could support it. So that would be my thoughts.
Eric, just from memory, we don't have much in the way of RA1 or RA2 vacant ground, do we?
When I was doing the survey for the RA2, there were several vacant properties, but I think a couple of them are owned by the city. One was owned by the school district. So no, there's not a whole lot out there. So, but I could give a more thorough report, perhaps at the next meeting when bringing the actual code amendment forward.
Yeah. I'd also like to mention that our council liaison has been here, has arrived. Thank you.
Thank you. Dressed nicely, as always. Your wife does a good job, guys.
Yes, she does.
Eric, if you'd like to continue on.
Yes, the next item I'll speak to is the maximum driveway width. So currently, within the zoning code, the zoning code outlines the maximum width of a driveway. And really, I think we're, for the purpose of this discussion, to like to focus on residential driveways. That maximum width is set at 24 feet right now. So a homeowner is permitted a 24-foot wide driveway. Okay. We've received comments on this, basically a desire to allow a little bit more flexibility, especially when considering a 3-car garage, that perhaps a driveway capable of having a head-in driveway access to 3-car garage should be permitted by the zoning code. I do have one picture of, I'll show you. So this is what would occur today and did recently occur. This is a fairly recent photo. And so over here on the right-hand side of the screen, I kind of wish the photo was back a little bit further so you could see the street is just off the bottom of the photo. You can see the flare from the driveway. But the driveway is 24 feet wide as measured from here over to the right. And then in order to accommodate the 3rd-car garage, they put this extension onto the driveway. So I think the desire is to allow the flexibility so that if this, if a similar situation arose in the future, that they should just extend that out and have their driveway 3 cars wide. And I was wondering if you all have any thoughts about such a thing.
I have a question.
Perfectly logical. I mean, I would.
I have a question on that one, though. Looking at that picture, I'm assuming that the construction joint we're looking at running left and right across the picture is at the apron, at the drive apron?
This right there?
Yes, sir.
I believe so. I think the street's going to be just to the bottom of the picture.
Okay. Would it have not been just as appropriate to go? You're 24 feet at the street. My mouse will cooperate with me. Probably 24 feet from this line. And okay, so if I'd have backed up 1 foot, 6 inches, and taken off at a tangent and run across to the arc of that circle.
Yes, and that's what they usually do, but this particular one chose not to do it that way.
Well, isn't that an acceptable alternate?
Yeah, I don't know. So my stance on this is that the 24-foot requirement would extend to their property. So the right-of-way line is probably somewhere around in there. And so that's my stance on it, my interpretation of the code.
From a maintenance point of view, I have an issue with going wider than 24 feet at the street. if your apron being 24 feet.
Okay. May I ask why?
You ever driven a snowplow?
No, I have not.
When you drive that snowplow and you're running down through there and you don't have that curb, all of a sudden you're off the road at 36 feet wide, in theory, 312s, 310s, 30 feet. You don't have anything to catch that snowplow on, and you're up and out and you're in the yard. It's a little bit easier. The shorter that driveway is, the easier it is to keep that plow in line, partially. The other side of that is they also expect, I don't care where you're in the city or the county or out on the state road, they expect you not to put anything in that driveway. And the longer that driveway is, the harder it is to do that. 12-foot driveway is not too tough. You can play with your plow blade and make that work. 24-foot driveway starts to get pretty tough. You're going to dump snow. I got a 10-foot driveway at home. And I have figured out if I come up the driveway, if I come up the street 10 feet in front of my driveway and clear it out, I get nothing in my driveway. It's just from a maintenance point of view and the guys out working in the street. And that's my perspective, so.
But global warming is supposed to cure all this.
Yeah. Go out and look at the river.
And Chris and Bunny would probably know this better than I would, but aren't most homes that are going to have 3-car garages going to be in subdivisions where they require you to come in, have the garages on the side, so you're coming in off the main street and you're coming around anyway? It's not going to be like this. I don't think this happens very often, does it?
The only thing that I would think, Dave, is garages are becoming more popular, and we've gone from 2 to 3. You potentially may see that more in homes where the garages are front facing.
Oh, where the subdivisions will allow you
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now in the Jefferson City area, you kind of associate those with the subdivisions where they say that the doors can't face the road unless it's a corner lot or something like that. But I really think potentially as people build homes and all that, you may see more of that. I'm really personally at this point, I'm a little bit torn. I like to see people have flexibility and availability to do things, but you take 30 some odd feet, at some point are you starting to make it all look like a commercial driveway in a commercial setting? That was what I was toying with in my mind and thought, I'll think about this before I kind of say what my thoughts are.
And I'm just thinking the places that I've seen just offhand in St. Louis and the Kansas City area, they don't have those really wide drives for the most part. I don't know if you know personally about any of the particular ordinances.
I did do a little bit of homework on some other ordinances. There are about 5 or 6 cities in Missouri that I tend to compare our code to from time to time. So I think I can report on about 4 of them. But, for example, Columbia allows a 30-foot driveway. Blue Springs, Missouri, allows a 30-foot driveway. Springfield has theirs listed at 22 feet. And then Chesterfield has theirs listed at 26. And so ours at 24 would seem to be a little bit on the low side, when comparing at least with those 4 cities. So
I'm kind of like Chris. I'm not sure how it's going to look if you have a whole subdivision of 30-foot wide driveways. You would think the developer probably wouldn't do that, but from an aesthetics standpoint, if you start having everybody in the city do that, I'm not sure how it's going to look.
How big a lot would it have to be to put a house? And in theory, to do what you're doing, you need to be able to have the house and the garage next to it and go straight back in at 28, 30 feet, whatever, back.
I think that this house, I don't recall the exact zoning district, but I'm thinking it was an RS2, which is a pretty standard zoning district and a pretty standard sized lot, so nothing particularly large or small about it. It's pretty average. It happened to be on a corner, so they had the ability to face either direction. They chose this direction, and so I think technically the front door of the house, I think, faces the other street. But it's not difficult to imagine the door, facing the street as well.
I guess I'm just sitting there looking at this. If my house is 30 feet wide?
I believe this particular floor plan, the house was about as wide as the garage is, so I think it came out to about 36 feet. So yeah.
Okay. So if I'm 36 feet, and do you have and I should know this off the top of my head and I don't, a distance between your structures required?
Yeah, 10 feet,
10 feet?
Side setback. So
Okay, so if you got, so now we're at 36 and 10 and 36, and then you got setbacks off your property line?
25 on the front.
No, but okay, but I'm just talking about side lots. So if you got a side lot line of 10 feet,
well, another way to look at it is so of the 4 single-family residential districts, the RS2 district is a pretty popular one. I say popular, pretty prevalent one through the city, and it has an 80-foot lot width. And so, potentially a 30-foot driveway could take, 30 feet out of that 80 would be paved, and then with a 1 or 2 foot flare on it, so it'd be slightly larger than that. So about 34 feet of the street of the 80 feet of street frontage, would be paved with driveway. So a little less than half.
I was going to say just about half.
I can't imagine you get this very often, other than in situations like this in an RS2. I think most of it would be R1, RS1, where you have those 100-foot lots.
You guys are right, it is ugly. Get it that wide. I wouldn't think about how wide on the small lots.
Eric, is there any reason that you could not disclose that location, so maybe visually these commission members could go by and then, their travels?
I can certainly tell where it is. It's located, I'm trying to get my street names right.
It's not on Beef. Scott Station.
Shoemate Chapel? Yeah, it's Shoemate Chapel.
Yeah.
They're built, yeah, that's, because I know exactly where that is.
It's not off,
Never get
it's off
grass to
Madeline's
grow in
Park?
their front yard either.
Is it Madeline's Park? Off,
Well, yeah, Ralph Clark's got his farm down, we go down there every day. I mean, they had a machine in there putting that mud, that's.
well, how about this? How about you guys just email that to us when you think of it?
Mercedes is a cross street in there, isn't it?
I believe it's Mercedes.
Is this something that Capital City Construction built?
Yes.
It's off of Mercedes.
Yeah. So it's on the corner of Mercedes and Scott Station.
It's Mercedes and Scott Station.
Mercedes and Shoemate Chapel
Shoemate Chapel
Road.
Okay.
So.
Well, I think in the meantime, maybe we could drive by there and take a look at that, and if anything, maybe come up with a, either say we're fine where we're at, or maybe something in between.
Well, another option would be to tie the width of the driveway to the number of garage bays as a maximum.
Yeah, but you wouldn't necessarily have, if the code were to be raised to 30 feet, you wouldn't necessarily have to have a 3-foot or 3-car garage. You could just want an extra large driveway to park more vehicles in, and so that might be a good option.
The only instances I can see where you might consider giving a wider driveway would be something like this, where they have direct access to the street, but where the subdivision restrictions say the garage has to face to the side and the house faces the main street. Why would you want, one, I can't imagine why most people want a 30-foot drive, but I don't think you'd want to allow that. That's going to make everything look kind of crummy.
You wouldn't need it.
Yeah, I can understand that. Yeah, you probably wouldn't need it.
Yeah.
We
Should.
Never say somebody won't want it.
Yes, we are presented with all sorts of strange situations.
Not to drag this out, Eric, but to try to figure out what Mr. Yarnell mentioned was, what is the width go to the setback line, or does the width go to the right-of-way line?
My interpretation is that the width is between the setback line and the street, and once you get past the my interpretation is the width is applicable between the property line and the street. And once you get to the property line, then you can flare your driveway out or do whatever in order to accommodate your specific situation on your property, whether it be a drive going up the side of the house to store your boat or RV, or
let's use the example that the property line. is at the seam in this concrete where that joint is right there. They could have, right there, taken off and made that as wide as they wanted.
That would be my interpretation, yes. I suspect the property line is right there. I'm pretty sure that's where it is in this case. So, yep. And so then, and the typical property line is about 12 feet from the curb, so.
Okay.
Apron is going to be another 6 to 8 feet wider than 24 feet.
I think it's usually only 1 or 2 feet on each side.
By the time you get that flare in there. Yeah. All right, Eric, thank you. We'll maybe try to see if we can drive by there and get some opinions.
Okay. The third item I'd speak to is fences. So some time ago, I think we had refreshed our zoning code in terms of listing a few of the prohibited fencing materials, kind of strengthened our code when faced with some specific situations: cloth, canvas, sheet metal. I think barbed wire, chicken, and hog wire was already in there, but that's the current list of prohibited fencing materials up on the screen. We were thinking of expanding on that list to address a few situations that have come up between now and then. And then also listing permitted materials. We don't have a list of things that can be used, so we often are faced with that question: what can I use? Well, if we had an actual list within our code, we could direct people to that. Right now we're just telling them what they can't use. So I have a few pictures. I'm just curious, just to get your initial reaction on whether you'd want a plywood fence, next to your house. Okay. How about a debris fence? So it's basically wire with a bunch of rocks put in between it. I'm not sure if maybe you could incorporate some logs or wood or yard waste in there as well. No. Rolled plastic. Now that's usually temporary, and so my interpretation is the temporary fence really doesn't fall into our code. It's for a very temporary reason. But if somebody if your neighbor put that up and intended to leave it, would I was kind of putting a color other than orange up on the screen, so. Yes, fence permits are required of. I can't tell you that we inspect every single one. It is our intent to inspect every single one. We are short-staffed, as many departments in the city are, and so fences, happen to be kind of at the bottom of things that could potentially be in major conflict with our code. Usually, we address fences up front at the time of the permit, and making sure the property owner is aware of what the height of the fence can be, where it can be on their property in terms of being on their property and not over the right-of-way line, and then also what materials are allowed or not. And so,
I ask, my neighbor unfortunately they lost their little dog, and they're trying to require another dog through the Humane Society or whoever, but. The lady came over the other day to the house, wanted to know if I cared if they put up a fence, on the line, and I said, well, no, not as long as it's attractive, that's fine. But evidently, the Humane Society and all these places where you can get pooches, they require you to have a fence. I don't know if you're aware of that or not. So you're going to probably be getting a lot of permits to put fences up, because you can't. The lady told me she can't get a dog until she puts a fence up. My neighbor.
I have heard of very stringent requirements from some of the humane societies, not only in terms of that, but doing almost to the effect of background checks on potential
and you all
adopters.
would require, because if she's going to ask me this, I'm sure. So you all would require a permit, and they'd have to explain what kind of fence they're going to put up and all that. I'm sure they do the right thing, because her husband's a veterinarian, so I'm sure they do the right thing. But I'm just curious what process they have to go through.
It is a permit. It usually is the minimum fee permit, a $10 permit, and But yes, they are required. And the reasons are for some of the things I just mentioned, to ensure that they're actually placing it on their own property, to ensure that they're not exceeding the height limit, and then to ensure that the materials are something that's appropriate. Of course, someone installing that fence prior to knowing those things could very easily install a fence that is not permitted, in which case they'd have to be removed. So it's a $10 cost that could save them a lot of money.
Thank you. I'll refer. I'll give her that information. Thank you.
Okay. A few others, and so Pinterest is a very popular website that has a lot of crafty ideas on it, and so I'm beginning to hear the word Pinterest on the other end of my telephone more often, and so yes, this is an actual one of someone wanting to put up a door fence in town, and the answer was that it's not permitted because it consists of more than 2 different types of material. Okay, and so if someone's wanting to put up a fence, they cannot use more than 2 different types of fencing material. It gives them a little bit of flexibility, but I would interpret each door to be a different material. Now, if they want to decorate the inside of their fence, with whatever they wish to decorate it with, I don't think that's the issue. It's what's visible from the neighbors, and then this is Janice's favorite one, is the ironing board fence, and so some language we would likely bring to you, a little bit of language that would firm up some of our fencing material in terms of showing listing what's permitted, what's not permitted, and then perhaps allowing a director's determination when faced with unique materials. I don't know what those materials would be. I don't think that something like this would even be approvable by the director because it, again, consists of more than 2 different types of materials. But, there could be unique situations where a particular type of fence does make sense and is not, would not be offensive to surrounding property owners.
My thought, Eric, if you start listing what is permitted, there's new stuff being developed all the time, and you're going to be fraught with people coming in and wanting a hearing on, well, is this allowed, is this allowed? I think it's almost easier, well, I don't know what's easier.
When researching other codes, there's language such as materials commonly used for fencing, and so just kind of tying it to those common materials. And so, but yeah.
Eric, I do think you have missed one so far. If you're done, there was a fence out on, I think it was Rainbow Drive, where they made it out of pallets. They stuck pallets. You might want to put that one in. I don't know if it's still there or not. Privately, I'll tell you whose parents' home it was.
I think I do have a couple other examples. These are a little less clear-cut. Okay, chain link fencing is a common type of material, or fencing material, obviously. When you put the inserts in it, I think is sometimes you get mixed reactions from people, usually to the color of the inserts, but is something like this appropriate in a residential area? And I'm not saying it is or is not, but I am curious if anyone has any thoughts on it. I can't think of any specific situations offhand where that's in a residential area, but I'm sure if we looked around, we'd probably be able to find it.
Or if you limited it to natural colors, maybe, but
Green's natural.
well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be too. I'd rather have that than something purple or yellow
Or white. White is the most common,
yeah.
and I particularly don't like white because it stands out so much. Prefer some of the neutral colors or earth tones.
Seems to me I've seen some of that where over time it's deteriorated and looks pretty bad.
Yes, I think.
I don't know what you do about that.
There is some language in our code that requires fences to be maintained, and that could probably be strengthened up a little bit. Oftentimes that falls under some of the property maintenance inspectors that go around and look at such things here at the city. Then I have one more, and this is fencing with attached screening, and so the kind of a tarp material, sometimes partially transparent, sometimes used as a windscreen. You'll find them around tennis courts and such a lot, usually much taller to shield the wind. You'll find them in industrial areas. I think I have a picture, so like an industrial screening type of fence. Not the prettiest thing in the world, but it's sure a lot better looking than what's behind it in most cases. But if your neighbor were to attach that to their chain link fence, would you be offended, so to speak? So, but I'd be happy if anyone had any thoughts on fencing or any materials such as pallets that might need to be included in our list as well. If you think of anything, please feel free to shoot me an email. Any thoughts or particular materials you think should or should not be allowed, other than some of what we've gone over. If you have any thoughts on any of these, again, feel free to email, or we'll likely get an opportunity to discuss them at perhaps the next meeting with a formal proposal for a code amendment.
All right. Eric, thank you for those presentations, and we will look at that and get back with you. I guess you'll bring that back to us at a later time.
Yes.
Okay. We will move on with other business. City staff has informed me that we are going to do election of officers next month. Ralph will no longer be with us. His time has come up.
Right, Ralph served three full terms on the Planning and Zoning Commission, so the city code does not allow for anyone who's served 3 full terms to be reappointed.
So between now and next month, we need to get our election committees together and get working on who we need for chairman and vice chairman. Is that the only 2 positions that we need? Right? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. We will move on to scheduled reports. Environmental Quality Commission. Michael.
The commission didn't meet last month, but I think it has met since we have met. We are participating in the Campo pedestrian bicycle advisory activities and tracking that. And we also decided that we should work on a strategic plan for the commission, so we're working on that.
Very good. Thank you. We appreciate your time and you going to those meetings. Will we be electing a new member for that committee next month, or is...
I would say the appointment of the representative to the Environmental Quality Commission could occur this month as on the agenda. So yes, you could go ahead and take care of it this month.
Well, with that being said, do we want to see if anyone else would like to do it, or if Michael, since he's done such a great job, and would like to do it again? Are you okay with that, sir?
One more time.
You're okay with that? Okay. Okay. Sounds like he's excited to do it one more time. All right. We take a vote on that?
Yeah, if you could.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for Mr. Yarnell. Any comments or concerns? All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries. Michael, thank you. We do appreciate it. Okay. With that, we will move on to the assignment of a private street name of Ameren Drive, located off of Retention Road in the Missouri National Guard facility.
Yes. Okay. Up on the screen, I have a location map to orient you to where this particular request is. We were contacted by the Missouri National Guard in terms of assigning an address for a new building that they constructed. I believe it's a chapel on their out at the Ike Skelton Training Facility here in town, and the assignment of addresses, including assignment of street names, is a responsibility of the city. And the street name procedure is that new street names are proposed new street names are heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission and then approved by the City Council. And so, in a similar way as subdivision plats come before you with street names attached to them, a street name that's not associated with the subdivision plat would still come before you for review and approval by the council. So, up on the left-hand side of the screen here is a location map. You'll see Highway 5063 down at the bottom and Militia Drive leading up to the National Guard facility right there. So this particular road, very small road, almost a driveway, is located at the back of their facility. I personally, I doubt many people around town have been that far back into their facility. Over on the right is a blow up of the area. And so it was just a gravel drive, probably for a gravel storage lot for them. They are going to pave the drive to a width approximating a street, and in order to access the new building that's located back here, I believe the paving is scheduled for this summer. I think it's already been widened in anticipation of the paving. The building back there, I think substantial funds were received by Ameren in order to build the building, and in appreciation of that, they're requesting that the road be named after that company, and so are proposing a name of Ameren Drive. I think they're originally proposing Ameren Way, and I informed them that the suffix of way is reserved for alleys within Jefferson City, and so Ameren Drive is the proposed street name. Staff recommendation is for approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Should it be court since it's dead-ended?
No, I doubt it has a cul-de-sac bulb on the end. It is a private street, and so it's not a street that's going to be maintained by the city. They have several other similar type situations across their property, their facility, and so it's really not that odd of a request, and so assigning a name to it and so that they can keep their addressing in order seems appropriate.
Very good. Any commission members have questions for Eric? You would like a motion to move forward with this?
Yes, if it could.
Okay, if I can get a motion.
I move that we approve the name of Allen Drive as a proposed street name.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any comments? All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carries.
And again, we will take that on to the city council for formal adoption.
Very good. Any other reports or anything else?
I only have one other item. Mr. Landon Otto Barron was born on May 12th. Thank you. He's doing good. Mom's doing good. Life is good.
How old is he?
He is 1 month old now. So just under 1 month. Yep.
Have you
Tomorrow.
heard that when you hear that crying, even though if you had something to do, you have to turn around?
Yes. That's one thing I told my wife was, when I heard him cry for the first time, I told her, later, I said, that is the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. I wonder how long that'll last.
Yeah, neat stuff, Eric. That's good.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a question, I guess, for staff, and that's in regards to the term limit for Mr. Ralph Robinette. So is it that his term expires this month, and do we have other people who are interested in serving on this body, or what?
We have Miss Bunny Tricky Cotton was previously an alternate, and she's been moved up to a full member, so we have a full contingent of regular members, and the code allows for 3 alternates. We currently have 2 alternates, so we are recently had a new appointment. Erin Wiseman was appointed as an alternate, and she was unable to be here this evening. But so we do have 1 opening for 1 alternate, and that alternate really should come from Ward 2. So we are recruiting, if you will, members from Ward 2 to serve as in that third alternate position.
Thank you.
Very good. With that being said, we will adjourn. Thank you all.
Yeah.